They escorted me out of my own corporate headquarters with a security guard who smelled like cheap onion rings and deep professional regret. That was exactly 6 weeks ago. But if we are telling the truth, and at this point in my life, why the hell not? The story starts with a cheap microwave that short-circuited in my tiny studio apartment 12 years ago. I was trying to reheat some leftover noodles while debugging the first unstable version of our sentiment analysis model. It was long past midnight. I had a pounding migraine that felt like a rusty nail being driven behind my eye. I was maybe 3 hours away from accidentally building the core engine that would later help a Fortune 200 company avoid a $1.5 billion public relations disaster. Back then, it was not a company. It was just me, a chipped whiteboard, and a noisy laptop that wheezed like a dying alley cat whenever I compiled code. The walls were cracked. The neighbors screamed through the paper-thin drywall about who owed who a vape cartridge or $20. My idea of luxury back then was 2-ply toilet paper and a cold soda from the corner store. But the sentiment analysis model worked, and when it finally worked, I felt this chest-thumping joy like I was cheating gravity. Within 24 months, my apartment turned into an illegal fire hazard of dedicated employees. We had a caffeine budget higher than our monthly rent. Our lead data scientist, Fiona Cole, and our designer, Owen Ross, worked elbow to elbow on folding chairs. Somehow, between sleepless nights and broken ramen packets, we got noticed. A mid-sized firm named Apex Global Solutions swooped in with promises, funding, expansion, mentorship. "We want to honor your vision," they told me. "We just want to help scale it." So I sold my company for exactly $10. No, that is not a typo. I sold my life work for a single $10 bill. I did not do it because I was a saintly idiot, but because the deal was structured to give me equity, long-term influence, and most importantly, an airtight clause buried deep in the contract. If I were ever terminated from the company without cause, I could buy the entire asset back. For the exact same price, $10. I remember my lawyer, Oliver Grant, pausing when he read that line in the final draft. "Do you think they will forget this is in here?" he asked, looking over his glasses. I laughed. "They won't even see it," I replied. "They are too busy looking at the projected profit margins." And they didn't. Not the new CFO Gavin Pierce with his square jaw and MBA-inflated ego. Not Clara Jenkins, the VP of Brand Alignment, who once told me that the word data was too masculine for our pitch deck. And certainly not the board who barely glanced past the page with the projected returns. Before I go further, let me be real with you. 78% of you listening right now are not subscribed. I get it, digital commitment is a scary thing, but I am trying to hit 15,000 subscribers. So, if you like stories where arrogant corporate executives accidentally hand a founder back his empire for the price of a gas station sandwich, consider subscribing. It is just a digital fist bump to keep the story going. Now, where were we? I stayed on after the sale was completed. Officially, my title was Chief Strategy Officer. Unofficially, I was the last person in the conference room who still cared about the actual product. At first, it was fine. They let me run the product team. Gavin Pierce stayed in his spreadsheet kingdom on the top floor. Clara Jenkins posted daily inspirational quotes and got drunk at networking brunches. But slowly, little things started shifting. Monthly innovation meetings turned into brand synchronization sessions with no engineers invited. R&D floor got repainted in pastel mindfulness colors that gave everyone migraines. And instead of analyzing real user feedback, we started running everything through tone optimization models to make the data sound more upbeat and positive. Meanwhile, I would get pulled into meetings just to be ignored. Gavin would talk over me with empty phrases like market synergies and agile recalibration. Clara started introducing me as our founding spirit, which is corporate code for this person used to matter but does not anymore. I kept quiet. I took notes. I paid close attention. And one night, 3:15 in the morning, just me and a glass of water and a sinking feeling in my gut, I pulled out the original acquisition agreement. Found the clause still valid, still binding. Section 12B, tucked in right after a page on arbitration clauses and intellectual property disclaimers. My name was there, my terms were clear, and my $10 buyback option was waiting. Oliver Grant was still my lawyer, still picking up when I called. He did not say much after I explained the situation. Just start prepping, he told me. He did not ask about my intentions. He already knew. The first thing they killed was the whiteboard. It was one of those old-school monsters, chipped on the corners and permanently smudged with dry erase ghosts from brainstorms past. We called it Bertha. I had scribbled the entire natural language processing architecture on it the night before our first pitch to investors. The developers would leave weird cartoons on it at 3 in the morning to cope with grueling death sprints. That board held our blood, our sweat, and a disturbing amount of off-brand coffee stains. Clara Jenkins had it hauled out during one of her office vibe audits. "We are elevating the aesthetic," she chirped as two men in jumpsuits carried it toward the freight elevator. "Bertha gives off founder trauma, founder trauma." That was week 1. By week 4, our weekly product jam session had been rebranded as a brand alignment touchpoint. No engineers, no data scientists, just marketing managers talking about how our user analytics platform should evoke trust vibes, instead of triggering anxiety loops with aggressive metric transparency. Gavin Pierce nodded sagely during those meetings, which was rich coming from a man who once asked me during a budget review, "Why do we even need a user experience team? Can't we just copy what Shopify does?" The vibe shift was slow, but it scratched at me like fiberglass under the skin. Clients who used to call me directly started looping in their new account managers. We hired mid-level managers who were trained in ignoring real issues and thanking you for your patience. Our best data lead, Fiona Cole, cornered me in the parking garage late one night. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes from translating marketing fluff back into raw database queries. "I am getting offers," she said, her voice quiet as she looked around to ensure the concrete walls did not have ears. "Real offers from companies that still care about analytics. Double what I make here." "What is happening upstairs, Charles?" I answered her with complete honesty. I told her that I did not know, but that I was watching closely, and that she should sit tight for a few more weeks. And I was. The engineering floor went from a vibrant chaos of post-it storms and late-night burritos to a graveyard of empty desks and recycled corporate buzzwords. They slashed the research budget for our sentiment engine by 80% to fund a massive rebrand campaign. The campaign featured a blue beach ball mascot named Trusty, a cartoon beach ball for a machine learning analytics company. I almost threw my keyboard through a window when I saw the presentation slides. They started letting go of redundant roles, which is just corporate language for anyone who was not drinking the corporate Kool-Aid. I tried to raise serious concerns about product degradation during an executive meeting. Gavin smiled like he was posing for a toothpaste advertisement and told me, "You are emotionally attached, Charles. That clouds your strategic clarity." Clara chimed in right after him. "We need to think like a rocket ship, not a museum," she said. She uttered that sentence with a straight face while wearing a $1,200 jumpsuit covered in tiny stars. That night, I went home, poured a small drink, and pulled the contract from my locked cabinet again. I reread Section 12B slowly and carefully. The executive is terminated without cause. He may exercise his right to repurchase the asset as defined in Exhibit A at the original consideration amount within 30 days of notice, provided that I did not need to finish reading the sentence. I had memorized it years ago. The clause was still there. It was still legal, and it was still binding. Oliver Grant texted me the next morning without any prompting. "Do you still want me watching their Delaware filings?" he wrote. I replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji. Then I printed the clause again, folded it carefully, and tucked it into the inside flap of my leather laptop sleeve. I did not do it because I was ready to pull the trigger just yet, but because something in my gut, some survival instinct honed over a decade of startup battles, was starting to whisper. They were going to push me out to show the investors they had moved past the founder era. And when they did, they would not see the trap closing until it was too late. By the end of the second month, the atmosphere had become completely toxic. Clara had hired a brand consultancy firm for $85,000 to tell us that our primary color scheme was too aggressive. They suggested a soft teal. The engineers were leaving in droves. We lost 5 key developers in a single week. The system was starting to show lag times, and client reports were being delayed. When I pointed out that our server response times had increased by 40%, Gavin shrugged. The customers love the new dashboard design, he said, tapping a printout of the beach ball logo. Metrics are lagging indicators. Brand loyalty is what drives future growth. I looked at him and realized there was no point in arguing. The ship was taking on water, and the captain was busy polishing the handrails. I went back to my office, closed the door, and waited. Let them think they were winning. Every mistake they made was just drawing them closer to the line I had drawn in the sand. It happened during the second quarter review. What should have been a routine numbers meeting turned into a public execution. The boardroom was freezing, the kind of expensive cold that says we pay too much for air conditioning because we can. I was flipping through the monthly performance deck when Gavin Pierce cut me off mid-sentence. "Let's pivot, Charles," he said, smirking like he had practiced the line in his bathroom mirror. "Clara has a deck that really captures our evolved brand identity." I blinked. "We are discussing product retention across sectors. Why would we pivot to a marketing deck?" But he was already motioning to the assistant, who dimmed the lights like it was a theater production. Clara Jenkins clicked her remote with theatrical flair. Onto the projection screen came a slide titled, "From Sentiment to Synergy, the Next Chapter." And there it was. Our advanced analytics dashboard, the one I had built in my apartment years ago, turned into a pastel-colored carousel of emojis, gradients, and a smiling cartoon named Trusty, now wearing sunglasses. Clara was beaming. "We are shifting the tone. No more data overwhelm. Customers want comfort, simplicity, and friendly vibes. Think Duolingo meets operational analytics." I laughed. I could not help it. It was a loud bark of sheer disbelief. Gavin glared at me. "Do you find this funny, Charles?" "No," I replied, leaning forward. "I find it tragic." Silence fell over the room. Clara gave that brittle public relations smile she wears when she is about to bite your neck. "We appreciate your passion, Charles. But let's not cling to founder sentimentality. That era was charming, but we are scaling the company now." Founder sentimentality. I repeated the words slowly in my mind like tasting a rotten strawberry. Gavin turned to the board. "Frankly, we need to ask if Charles's role is still aligned with where we are heading. Vision is valuable, but alignment is vital, and we have hit a clear friction point." He floated it casually, like discussing a logo redesign. I felt it in my gut, and everyone in the room did too. A line had been crossed. No final decision was made that afternoon, but the suggestion hung in the air like the scent of ozone before a lightning strike. I closed my laptop and did not argue. That night, I drove home in silence. I was not angry or even sad. I was cold, detached, like a switch had flipped in my head. I was watching my own downfall like a nature documentary. At 3:15 in the morning, I texted Oliver Grant, "Pull the documents. If they fire me, we are triggering the clause." Oliver replied within a minute, "Copy that. We will prep everything." I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared at the contract tucked neatly in my drawer. Let them come. I had paid the price to build this company once. Now they were going to pay for forgetting who wrote the blueprints. The next 3 weeks felt like a slow-motion car crash. It was all corporate veneers and buzzwords while they tore out everything that made the company worth a damn. First to go was Owen Ross, our lead UX designer, who had been with me since the apartment days. Gavin called it a strategic sunset of overlapping competencies. Owen called me after he was escorted out, his voice shaking. "They didn't even let me clear my desk, Charles." Security walked me out like I was a criminal. 2 days later, marketing absorbed the design department. Clara hosted a celebration meeting with cupcakes and mood boards. She handed out shirts that said, "Trust the shift." That same week, 3 of our senior engineers quit before lunch. They packed their headphones and walked out. I tried to intervene during a management sync, suggesting we pause the reorganization until client metrics stabilized. Gavin smiled like a python in loafers. "We value your emotional investment, Charles, but we are not running a nostalgia project." They froze me out completely after that. Every decision routed around me like I was a pothole in the road. Meetings were moved without my invite. Slack channels went dark. I would refresh the administration dashboard and find features I had greenlit quietly removed. And still, I showed up every single day, calm and professional. I was taking notes for the coming storm. Then Toby Harris knocked on my office door. Toby had started as our intern years ago. He was a bright kid who once spilled tea on our first server rack and worked until dawn to fix the wiring. Now he was the product lead for the mobile team, and the last of the original crew standing. He did not sit down. He stood in the doorway looking nervous. "They have the list, Charles," he said quietly. "Layoffs, you are on it." I looked up from my desk. "Who told you?" "It doesn't matter," he whispered. "It is coming next week. They want you out before the next quarter so they can show post-founder independence in the upcoming investor update." I thanked him, and he nodded once before leaving. That night, I did not pour alcohol. I poured ink. I pulled out the checkbook Oliver had sent me weeks ago. I wrote out a check for exactly $10. It was a quiet power in a small rectangle of paper. I placed it in a crisp white envelope. No stamp, not yet. Just waiting, like me. I tucked it in my desk drawer next to the photo of the original team in our freezing kitchen. Let them think they were winning. Let them high-five over layoffs. Because that $10 check was going to blow the whole thing wide open. The Human Resources Department booked the meeting for 3:15 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. The calendar invite had no subject line, just a block of time labeled Executive Update. I was not stupid. I knew exactly what it meant. The hallway to the Human Resources suite smelled like someone had sprayed pine freshener over a dumpster fire. I walked in wearing my best blazer, expression set to that of an unbothered librarian. The conference room was staged. Gavin Pierce and Clara Jenkins were sitting side by side like royalty at a disaster. The Human Resources representative, Rebecca, was clutching a manila folder like it contained a live snake. Gavin spoke first, oozing fake sympathy. "We have appreciated everything you have built here, Charles, truly. But we feel it is time to move in a different direction." A different direction. It was corporate language for execution. Clara chimed in with her usual spin. "This doesn't diminish your legacy. Think of it as an exciting new chapter for everyone." She smiled as if she had just put down a family pet and wanted credit for petting it first. They slid the termination paperwork across the table. The severance package was insulting, and the non-disclosure agreement was toothless. They even included a pre-written statement for my social media, complete with corporate hashtags. I did not speak or blink. I flipped through the pages like checking a grocery list. Rebecca cleared her throat. "We will need your security badge and laptop before you leave the floor." They did not even let me return to my office. A security guard was waiting outside the door. He escorted me to the elevator. I handed over my laptop, my badge, and my access fob. As the elevator doors slid shut, I caught one last glimpse of Clara through the glass wall. "Already laughing at something," Gavin whispered. I did not scream or punch a wall. I went home, made a cup of tea, and opened my desk drawer. The envelope was ready. The next morning, Oliver Grant slid our package into a courier envelope. "Should I include a formal cover letter?" he asked. "No," I replied. "Just this." The letter was only 4 lines long, and only one line mattered. "I am exercising my right under Section 12B of the acquisition agreement. The check is enclosed." Oliver sealed the envelope and sent it out. By the time Gavin and Clara were drinking their morning lattes, the package was already on its way. They thought they had erased me with a calendar invite, but what they had actually done was trigger the clause that let me buy back my company for $10. They received the package on Monday. I was not there, but I knew those two well enough to write the script. Gavin likely skimmed the first line and smirked, telling Clara that I was just trying to scare them. Clara probably laughed and called it typical founder drama. They waited a full day before forwarding the documents to their legal team. On Tuesday morning, the general counsel of Apex Global Solutions, Margaret Shaw, called them into her office. Margaret was a woman who spoke in clipped syllables, treating every word like a billing item. "Have you read this contract clause?" Margaret asked, tossing the document onto her desk. "We skimmed it," Gavin said, leaning back. "It's just standard boilerplate." "You should have read it more closely," Margaret replied, her voice cold. "Section 12B is fully enforceable. There is no expiration date in the language. And more importantly, your team never completed the legal merger in Delaware. The entity was never fully absorbed. Charles Vance owns the controlling share of the original corporation, and you just gave him the key to reclaim all the intellectual property when you terminated him without cause." Silence fell over the room. I would have paid a fortune to see Gavin's face at that exact moment. He doesn't want the company back, Gavin stammered. He's just making a point. No, Margaret said. He has already reclaimed the asset. The check cleared this morning. By Wednesday, the panic began. Oliver had waited exactly 72 hours before tipping off a few of our key former clients. He sent quiet, direct messages to them, letting them know that I would be operating independently again. Very soon, using the same core technology and the original engineering team. My phone began lighting up with notifications. Adrian Cross from Medscope called first. I heard the rumor, Charles. Are you coming back online? Then Diana Reed, our first major enterprise client, texted, we only stay with Apex because of you. We are following you. By Friday, Gavin was losing sleep, and Clara was rage posting on social media about the dangers of ego in tech leadership. Inside Apex, the panic bloomed into a full crisis. The board was being informed, and their first investor call was turning into a complete bloodbath. I sat in my home office, sipping tea, watching the structure they had built on buzzwords and layoffs start to crack. They thought they had buried me, but they forgot I owned the shovel. The emergency board meeting hit their calendars like a meteor. Saturday, 9 in the morning. There was no breakfast spread, just angry investors in zip-up vests and board members in sharp blazers, all staring at the same document. My original contract was projected on the wall, with Section 12B highlighted in bright red. Gavin Pierce tried to play it cool. He adjusted his cufflinks and used phrases like technical oversight, but sweat was dripping from his temples. By slide 5, his collar was soaked. He mailed a check? One investor asked, incredulous. Yes, Margaret Shaw replied. And your finance department cashed it. We didn't know, because you didn't read the contract, she said. Clara Jenkins tried to deflect with marketing statistics. The brand identity remains intact, and our user trust metrics are. Stop, a board member snapped. Do you understand what he just did? He used your own paperwork to walk out with the engine of this company, and you handed him the keys with a grin. On the outside, the fallout was swift. Medscope announced they were freezing their contract pending organizational clarity. Our client, Diana Reed, went full scorched earth on social media. She posted, "We signed on for Charles Vance's engineering. Not a cartoon beach ball. We are leaving." The post gained 85,000 likes in a single day. 22 trade publications picked up the story. The headlines practically wrote themselves. Founder regains control with $10 clause. I was not gloating, I was too busy. Oliver Grant and I toured office spaces 2 blocks down from our old headquarters. We found a great space on the 8th floor. It had glass walls, room for 30 desks, 3 war rooms, and a high-end coffee machine. While Gavin was still trying to explain his way through a board mutiny, Oliver was signing our new lease. I stopped by the old building on Monday, wearing jeans and a hoodie. The new receptionist did not know who I was. Are you here for the press tour? She asked. I smiled no. I am next door. By the time Gavin walked into work that morning, 7 resumes from his remaining technical staff had already hit my inbox. Toby Harris was the first. His message read, I kept the receipts, let's rebuild. By week 3, my inbox was full of familiar names. Fiona Cole emailed, I have the NLP team, say the word. Owen Ross sent his resume, ready to fix things. We did not hold interviews, just a war council. 14 of us sat on folding chairs around a new whiteboard, eating pizza. Toby brought donuts, Oliver brought papers, and I brought our $10 check, framed for the wall. We had rage and a point to prove. That same week, a reporter from Fastline Weekly messaged me, asking if it was true that I had bought back the company assets for $10. I replied, technically, I reclaimed them. But yes, it is true. The next day, the article went live on the front page, the $10 King. Clara Jenkins posted a long, defensive response on her profile, featuring stock photos of eagles, but she turned off comments within an hour. Meanwhile, Gavin tried to restructure his way out of the nosedive. He announced more layoffs, a desperate PR campaign, and a sponsored podcast that absolutely no one ever played. Nothing worked. The company stock hit the pavement like a sack of wet cement. The board called another emergency meeting, and this time they were done. The resignation letters of Gavin and Clara were leaked to the press before the ink was even dry. Gavin's final memo was unintentionally poetic, stating he believed in innovation even if others did not see the vision. We rebranded immediately, Same name, different face. Our new logo was a sleek phoenix rising out of a smoldering $10 bill. It was not subtle, but it was satisfying. Our relaunch campaign tagline was simple, backed by demand, built to last. Former clients did not just return, they funded us. 3 of them pulled together an investment round to jumpstart our operations. "We trust you, Charles," they told me. We never trusted them. By the end of the month, we were not just alive, we were loud. They ambushed me with the keynote slot at the annual tech conference. I was originally scheduled for a boring panel on ethical growth, but the headliner canceled and the conference chair called me. "We want to move you to the keynote slot," she said. "Your story has captured everyone's attention." The auditorium was a sea of lanyards. Every seat was filled with founders, investors, and tech reporters. The lights dimmed and my name came up in bold white letters, the price of forgetting the fine print. I walked onto the stage slowly, not smiling yet. I told them about the microwave, the apartment walls, and how I sold my company for $10 because I believed in the mission. I told them about the beach ball mascot, the betrayal, and the layoffs. Then I reached under the podium and pulled out the black frame containing the $10 check. I held it up like a sword pulled from stone. The crowd erupted, phones rising to take photos. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I tapped the screen. It was a message from Oliver. "Final board resignation signed. It's done. You outlived them all." I grinned. I turned back to the crowd. "Always read the contract," I said, "and pause twice if you think you are smarter than the person who wrote it." The standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes. We took back our empire, and we did it for $10. If you are an office survivor, hit subscribe. Let's make your former bosses sweat.